everyone, it's Blake, and welcome in to episode number 15 of our WWE 2021 series in TEW 2020. This is SmackDown, and before we jump in, as always, if you haven't watched any of our other videos up to this point, the previous 14 episodes, would highly suggest doing that. Hit pause, go back, check those out. It'll give you a good idea of where our stories are and all that good stuff. At this point, we've had some significant events, to say the least, thus far, mostly on Raw, but SmackDown, there's been a lot going on too. We've got some big storylines. So check that out. If you don't want to go all the way back to the beginning, just start at King of the Ring. That's a good place to start. Episode number 12. That was our first pay-per-view, and a lot went down at King of the Ring. So go back, check that out, and come on back to SmackDown. But we are going to jump into SmackDown. It's a pretty lengthy show. We've got a lot of segments to get to. We're going to start with the pre-show with Humberto Carrillo getting a win over Cedric Alexander. Gets a 41, clearly, not good chemistry. And so that's what knocked this down a bit. So we probably won't have these two in any matches moving forward as singles, that is. Probably pair together some in tags. But for both of these two, when you have a big roster, as we know, like in WWE, you just can't always have something for everyone to do. And thus far, they've kind of been relegated to not jobbers, but they've been on the wrong side of things when it comes to the win column. So we just want to put these two together, see maybe if there was anything there, and clearly there wasn't from a chemistry standpoint. So, but we do have Humberto getting a win, so maybe that will give him a little momentum. Cedric, not a lot of momentum right now either, so this is just kind of something to give both these guys something to do. And it's the same for what was a really poor match here. I can't say I was expecting this to be this awful, but a 38. It is Jinder Mahal and Elias getting the win over Lucha House Party. Again, we just don't have a lot for any of these guys to do. I think Jinder will have some stuff to do moving forward in a storyline. Don't really have a lot for Elias right now. I'm just trying to figure out the best way to use him. We'll figure something out eventually, but on the road to the Great American Bash, which is our SmackDown-specific pay-per-view at the end of the month, right now we don't have a lot for either one of those guys. So putting them in here, let them get a little work in, and that's that, really, to be honest with you. So we will jump into the main show, and it's going to start with a pretty significant development, and it starts off actually with a really nice match here. I was not expecting to get a 70 out of this match with Drew McIntyre and Dio Madden. Of course, Dio Madden, the former Mace, but we were not going to have anything Retribution-related associated with the save. I could not do that, but we decided just to turn him back to Dio Madden. But really a nice match here. Probably a lot has to do with the popularity of McIntyre, I'm sure. Still being able to get that, I'll take it. It's perfectly fine. But Dio Madden off his game. But the big story here, last week's SmackDown, Drew McIntyre said that he was going to make an impact on this week's edition of SmackDown. He wasn't on King of the Ring. Of course, he wasn't in the tournament, all that. But he said this was his time to make an impact, which, of course, hinted a little bit at maybe something with Roman Reigns. And that leads us into the promo with Drew McIntyre, going into that, saying that he's here to make an impact, and he's about to do that right now. But before he can continue any further, the lights go out, and it is the return of Bray Wyatt, which this gets a 68. I would have liked this to be better. I'm not going to lie. I thought this would be a little bit better with this. But Bray Wyatt is back, and he hits the ring. Lights went out. He's back in the ring. And he basically, exchanges words with Drew McIntyre. He grabs McIntyre, takes him to the outside, drives him through the announce table, and we see Bray Wyatt standing above Drew McIntyre to end the segment. Again, would have liked this to be a little bit better for a hot return like this for Bray Wyatt. But nonetheless, this does start what's going to be a pretty big storyline for us. Drew McIntyre is on Bray Wyatt's hit list. We have no idea why. We have no idea what the situation is, of course, which I think you can say that sometimes for Bray Wyatt anyways. But that's it. And we did kind of had something, because Bray Wyatt right now is a babyface. We're not going to turn him heel just yet. But we are going to change his gimmick. We're changing it from the Fiend to a vigilante, and you'll see as we go along that will change some things with Bray Wyatt, and that's a big part of the storyline when it comes to it. But we're going to ignore the heel turn, and for right now, we're just going to do the gimmick change, and it gets great, so that is good. So we get away from the Fiend gimmick, and again, you'll probably understand why as we go throughout the storyline. But we do want to get away from that. So even though this is a little bit disappointing to me from a rating standpoint, this, like other stuff we've done, this is just the starting point, and I think we have a lot to get to, and I think it will only get better from here. So we'll take it. Bray Wyatt is back, so that gives us another star here on the SmackDown side. He's just kind of been, in a holding pattern, been waiting, and so now we are clearly on the road to something here with Bray Wyatt and Drew McIntyre. And then we have a segment right after that which is another one involving something related to our champion Roman Reigns. He gets to 73, Paul Heyman and Mick Foley. Heyman tells Foley that Roman Reigns will not stop. Of course, at King of the Ring, Roman Reigns gave Foley one last chance to deliver this mystery him character. Foley could not do it, so Roman Reigns just completely obliterated R-Truth, and that was that. And basically, this is Heyman saying that Roman Reigns is not going to stop, hinting that we may see another one of those sort of attacks from Roman Reigns here tonight on SmackDown. So that is the nature of this one, and we'll see if Heyman is right about that. And then that leads us to a match with Shayna Baszler and Tamina. Baszler gets another win. She's really been on a roll, 55 overall, probably a little bit better actually than I thought it would be, but we know that probably has to do with Tamina, who has continued to be, getting the groundswell of support, and that's kind of boosted things up. She's also in amazing form. So, but she could not match Shayna Baszler, who has just been on a complete roll right now. So Baszler with another win. And that just continues the momentum for her. She is not lost thus far in this save. She's won a lot of matches. So Shayna Baszler with another win. And then we get a promo from the Usos, who are our new undisputed tag team champions, which of course means that they will be able to float back and forth between Raw and SmackDown now. So the Usos are our champions, and they run down New Day once again. I know it says hyping their upcoming match with New Day, but it's basically just them running down the New Day, as they always do. Gets a 60, that's fine. As I said in the previous episode, I was going to start doing the Angle Rider. I just could not get to it this time to be able to get it all down. I started on some of them, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to get to all of them. So we're just using the basic ones here for now. But I think probably with Raw, I will start doing that, trying to write out the angles. Hopefully I have enough, time to be able to do that, because I would much rather do it. I think it would make it a little more engaging. So I'll try to do that before we get to the next edition of Raw. But this is the Usos continuing sort of the feud with the New Day, and it was the Usos coming out successful in that triple threat match and becoming the new undisputed champions. And that gets us to a tag team match here with a nice one. M62, we'll take it. Seth Rollins and Mustafa Ali get the win over Titus O'Neil and Otis. Sort of another, kind of a pairing where these two guys have not done a whole lot in the save. But these two are coming off of losing at the King of the Ring. It was Rollins, of course, losing in the semifinals. It was Mustafa Ali losing in the quarterfinals and then attacking Cesaro. We saw the sort of fallout from that on Raw, with Cesaro demanding a trade because he wanted to come basically beat Mustafa Ali's ass, but was not granted that by Steve Austin. So Cesaro still on Raw, but Rollins, of course, head and shoulder above everyone in this match. You thought it would be. Good to see Mustafa Ali with a fine performance here. But this was just something to give these two something to do after King of the Ring, and it's going to lead into Seth Rollins cutting a promo, and the details of the promo are that Seth Rollins is trying to figure out why there is no coronation for him winning the King of the Ring. So this guy is just basically completely lost his mind, thinking that he won the King of the Ring when he in fact did not. And so it's sort of that Seth Rollins character playing everything up to the extreme. And so does a good job here. We always get good promo ratings from Seth Rollins. So this is just him kind of playing that delusional, over-the-top character that somehow thinks he's won the King of the Ring, but he is not. And basically everyone's looking at Seth Rollins wondering what he's talking about. So Seth may be losing it after losing his opportunity to win the King of the Ring after losing that match against Daniel Bryan in the semifinals. And then we get a really nice, kind of segment here. Not really a whole lot to it, but you do have Bianca Belair come out because Asuka's about to have her match, and Bianca Belair comes out to sit ringside to scout Asuka. Last week, it was Asuka. Surprisingly, I think probably caught a lot of people by surprise that Asuka won the number one contenders match against Charlotte Flair, which the whole thing, everything was sort of setting up to Charlotte Flair versus Bianca Belair, but it was Asuka winning the number one contenders match. So it's set. It will be Bianca Belair versus Asuka at Great American Bash for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And so this was Bianca coming out to scout Asuka. No sign of Charlotte thus far. And as you'll see, no sign of Charlotte on this particular show. So what will the fallout be there? But a really nice rating here. We'll take it with a 71. And I'm looking forward to that match. I'm curious to see how that would play out from a rating standpoint. We do have some fun stuff in mind with this whole sort of scenario that we have here with the SmackDown Women's title. But I'm looking forward to that match. Curious to see what kind of rating we can get with that one at the Bash. And actually, a decent rating here, 69, a nice rating for Asuka getting the win over Nia Jax. Nia Jax, someone else who really hasn't played a whole lot into our plans, really to this point. But I think something you'll notice here, if you've been watching this series and you've seen our Raw roster and our SmackDown women's roster, I think it's becoming increasingly clear that we have a ton of depth, I think, on the SmackDown women's side. We have zero depth on the Raw women's side now with Rhea Ripley's injury out for a year. Nikki Cross, she's out, pregnancy, maternity, so she's probably out a year. So we actually are, I may have to make some decisions here on, do we make a trade pretty soon? I know it's early. We just did the draft, a month ago, but we may have to start looking at some trades here. Maybe Austin's going to have to come up with something because we've got to find some depth. And there are actually some women on the SmackDown side that aren't doing a whole lot right now that are pretty good. So we may have to look at that because we don't have the numbers on Raw. So that's something to keep in mind. But it is Asuka continuing momentum here. She has the match and gets the win. Although Nia Jax off her game, penalized due to extremely poor form. We've seen that in a couple matches with Nia thus far. But nonetheless, Asuka gets another win and is now on the road to that match with Bianca Belair at the Great American Bash. And speaking of women's talents, this, I think, expresses it even further. Mick Foley announces that Sonya Deville, who has not competed thus far, has not even factored into anything in our save. She has been waiting in the wings here, and she will be in action next week. And so we gets a 61, benefit from her having a groundswell of public support. So that is something else. So our SmackDown women's division, I think, is pretty strong at this point. Like I said, that's going to probably lead to me having to figure out a way to shuffle some things on the Raw women's side. I have plans for it already. I'm trying to make sure I think I want to do it at the right time. And so that is something that we're going to work on. But Sonya Deville, who has not had any matches thus far, she hasn't even been on. I don't think we put her on anything thus far in the month that we've been doing this. She's had nothing, but she will be in action next week. So kind of flexing our muscles here when it comes to the SmackDown women's division, which is head and shoulders ahead of Raw right now. And it is Damian Priest against Baron Corbin. We set this up last week. These two have been brawling for a couple weeks, and here it goes to 60. We don't have a winner. It's a double disqualification as these two basically just beat the hell out of each other. The referee decides that there's no way to control them. They're fighting, and rather than a double count out, it's just a double disqualification. These two are just really going at it, and clearly, as you can probably tell, with the double disqualification finish, we were trying to set up for another match, and we're still probably going to have it, but we have no chemistry with these two. So if this was something that was going to go further, we were probably not going to take it as far as maybe I would have wanted to. But nonetheless, we're going to, just face it, we're going to have another match between these two, just a matter of when and where. But having a double DQ, things are kind of still going. This was the first match between them, so we didn't know what to expect. But clearly, no chemistry there. So, it's not as if, I had this set up as a WrestleMania match or anything, but we wanted to give these two something, and we're setting this up for both to kind of have something moving forward. But this is something where, it's a little disappointing not to have any chemistry because they are going to have another match. That's just the way it is. So, a little disappointed on that, but it is a double DQ, which, as you'll see, will lead to something else here in the near future. And then we get to a promo from the New Day. We heard from the Usos earlier, running down the New Day as usual. And this gets to 65. Xavier Woods not doing well without a script to follow. Most of the time he does. So this is one of those, just didn't work out for this one for whatever reason. But the New Day continue to hype up their little feud with the Usos. And, in fact, next week, the New Day gets a 46. It's just one where, you have sort of a video announcement. There's not a whole lot you can do when you're just putting it overness and such. And the Viking Raiders are not really that over. But next week it is going to be the New Day versus the Viking Raiders in a number one contenders match for the undisputed tag team titles. Now, I know probably what you're trying to put together is because the Usos, who were on SmackDown, they won the titles. Therefore, they're now the floating team. SmackDown, they came from SmackDown. They were already on SmackDown. That automatically lets SmackDown to have the opportunity to have the number one contenders. So that's where we're at with this. That's why it's the New Day and the Viking Raiders for the number one contenders match, and also because we do have a brand-specific pay-per-view coming up, and it just makes sense to have the Usos and wrestle there against the team. Rather, you can't do that with a Raw team. So that's kind of the thinking behind that. It's probably sounding more complicated than it really is, but it's going to be the New Day and the Viking Raiders next week in a number one contenders match to determine who will face the Usos at Great American Bash. And we're not going to do that right now. Oh, sorry. There. And that leads us to what's actually going to be our main event match-wise. A 62, it is Shinsuke Nakamura getting the win over Sami Zayn. This one gets the crowd buzzing. That's good to know. As we've seen before, we've kind of went into a bit. Shinsuke Nakamura, his matches have not done as well as we would like, but a lot of that has to do with inconsistency, stamina, low morale, the slow and steady attribute, declining physical ability. We're just seeing that all over the place right now with Nakamura, and that's unfortunate because, it's just one of those things where this is what we're doing, and it is what it is, but his ratings are just not great. I think we've kind of reached that point where, the morale thing, I think we're going to look more into, and we've tried to up that. It just has not worked at this point. So, yeah, we'll kind of see with that. But he gets the win here, and that is to set up something else, which is Apollo Crews telling Mick Foley that he's beaten everyone, which, of course, he hasn't. And Foley tells him that he has now decided on his opponent. So we have our Intercontinental Championship match that's going to be set. It's going to be Apollo Crews defending against the person we just saw win that match, which was Shinsuke Nakamura. So it's Crews versus Nakamura for the Intercontinental Championship at Great American Bash. So gets a 64. That sets up an opponent here for Apollo. Apollo was kind of on Crews control, as you saw, for that first month or so, because we didn't really have anything for him to do at King of the Ring. He had a couple matches. Obviously he won them, but still, it's one where we were kind of making his first big defense. We wanted that to be at Great American Bash because it was a SmackDown pay-per-view. So, yeah, it's going to be Crews versus Nakamura. So we're already setting things in motion here, and if you see, you understand why probably. Like, we know we only have, 3 episodes now to be able to kind of get everything in to set up for Great American Bash. That's one of the limitations, I think, of having a brand split and doing the brand-specific pay-per-views that we want to do, kind of how we've set it up. So that is one of the things that I think you kind of have a disadvantage on, where I think, like right now, Raw probably has more of an advantage because they don't have a pay-per-view until SummerSlam, so they get 7 shows or 8 or whatever to build up to the big pay-per-view, so I have enough time to sort of build everything out from there. SmackDown, because you're coming right off of King of the Ring, and you're going now straight into another pay-per-view cycle, that's why I think it's, some of this may feel a little rushed, but we're trying to do the best we can, knowing that that's some of the limitations you have, which of course, for WWE in real life, that's how it works. So it's one of those things where you just kind of have to put everything together. But that is, I think, one of the limitations of the brand split is not being able to have a little bit more time. And you just have to put some of this stuff together pretty quickly. So Crews versus Nakamura, that's our Intercontinental Championship match at Great American Bash. And now, here he is. We teased it earlier. Paul Heyman said that Roman Reigns will not stop. And this was Roman cutting a promo on his way to the ring. Gets an 85. We know this guy. He's getting the light blue everywhere. It's just, that's how good he is. And he's on his way to the ring now to set another example, because this him is still not here. No one has delivered him yet. And so Roman Reigns is going to make his way out, and let's see who he makes an example of. Roman Reigns hits the ring, and he asks the Usos to deliver the next person that he, I guess, is just going to completely destroy. But instead, this is terrific. 92. This is fantastic. So Roman Reigns calls for the Usos to deliver the next person that he's going to destroy, which apparently was going to be Jeff Hardy, but Jeff Hardy just comes walking out. He has a microphone, and this is sort of that, we haven't seen it a lot, I think, in WWE, but like this is sort of that intense Jeff Hardy who is basically pissed off. He's tired of this Roman Reigns dude taking over everything, and he's sick of it. And he says that, expecting Roman Reigns just to completely destroy him, he is not going to have his career end at the hand of Roman Reigns. So he apparently, did something to the Usos, I assume, in the back, which, by the way, we'll find out more about actually what happened on this. But this is something where Jeff Hardy comes out and cuts a promo on Roman Reigns and says, hey, he is not going to let his career be put out at the hands of Roman Reigns, because he's already seen what Roman Reigns has done to R-Truth at King of the Ring. He's not going to be next. And so it's really Jeff Hardy standing up to Roman Reigns. And clearly this worked. Like I love this to have a 92 here because that really, I mean, we get all this, like this is great. Like Jeff improvising, all sorts of stuff. We continue the storyline with the him scenario because this kind of still plays into it. But Jeff Hardy standing up to Roman Reigns. So Jeff cutting a promo on him and saying that, he's going to actually stand up to him. He's not going to sit back and let, Roman Reigns just completely destroy him. He's going to stand up to him. And that's how we finish the show. So I obviously cannot be more thrilled than this to have a 92 coming out of this segment with Jeff Hardy now standing up to Roman Reigns, who has just been completely, essentially, holding SmackDown hostage in a sense over this past month or so, not getting this him delivered to him and then beating up R-Truth, not just beating him up, just completely destroying him. And Jeff Hardy decided he was not going to be next. So where this leads, we will see. But that, I think, is pretty good to have that. I get a 74 overall here. It does lose some popularity because this, is below, I think, where we're at as a company. I think we're at 76 still. So it is what it is. So we get a 74. I'll take that. Clearly, as usual, the Drew McIntyre stuff did pretty well. I'm a little disappointed that the Bray Wyatt thing didn't do as well. But Drew McIntyre, because of his overness, does really good. I mean, even the Seth Rollins stuff, like the Bianca and Asuka stuff, did pretty well. And then, of course, anything that Roman Reigns is in is always going to do well. So I'm actually, again, I'm very excited about SmackDown. I think, like I said, the only thing that I would probably look at is just some of the limitations of having to rush right into another pay-per-view in 3 weeks. But that's okay. I mean, it is what it is, and you know what you're getting with a brand split. So you have these brand specific pay-per-views, but still, I think SmackDown's got a lot of hot stuff going on, and I think we're building to what should be a pretty fun, I think, Great American Bash. It's going to be interesting to see, I think, how that one unfolds from a rating standpoint, because there will be some different matchups, and you just, it can't be like a super show where you have, the main eventers from Raw and the main eventers from SmackDown. You got people spread out everywhere. You got to use your entire roster here. So I think Great American Bash, we'll see what rating we get, but I think we should get some pretty good stuff out of that. So let's see if there's anything else we need to address before we wrap up this edition of SmackDown. Here's what we got going on the news front. Really, the main thing we want to look at here, Rhea Ripley's contract is ending. We talked about that on the State of WWE episode for July, which was a couple episodes ago, I guess now. So we knew her contract was ending, so that's not really anything. We will go to it and negotiate with her to try to see what we can do there, because certainly we don't want to lose her, even though, as we know, she is out injured with a torn Achilles, will not be back for a year. Whew, still gets me. So we're going to go ahead and negotiate with her. Written deal, yes. No contracts or no offers have been made on that. So we're going to go ahead and just give her a nice little contract here at whatever the value is. 3 years, I think that's pretty good. She's still young. We want to lock her in. We'll do this. We'll see what comes of it. She wants a higher cut of the merchandise. We're going to give that to her. Give her 25. Why not? I mean, she's out for a year. Let her get all the merch she can get. Yes, we'll make that deal official. So we'll see what comes of that with Rhea Ripley, but certainly we have no desire to lose her, even though she is on the shelf for a year. Drug test fees, SmackDown viewing figure, get 4.75. That's great. So, yeah, that's about it. Anything else here? Darby Allin having a storyline with Miro and AEW. Good to know. Let's see what else. Ryo Mizunami injured. Not ideal there. So really that's about it. SmackDown was a great show. We see that there. And, so that's SmackDown. If we look ahead, like we said, we do have the Great American Bash coming up. That's going to be July, week 4 on Sunday. Then it's off to SummerSlam. So that is what we're building towards right now. And on SmackDown, we're still got lots going on with Roman Reigns. Bray Wyatt's back. We got the big women's title situation going on. The tag team championships. We got a lot going on SmackDown. So a good show. And that will lead us back into Raw, which, once again, we got a lot going on Raw, too. So, as always, be sure to subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. And as usual, I really appreciate the feedback. And as mentioned, I know the commenters have mentioned it, too. You guys have talked about wanting me to do some of those, kind of how I book, looking at some of the spreadsheets I use and that sort of stuff, and how I put storylines together and just go behind the scenes a bit more. I will be doing that here as we move forward, so we'll have some of that. maybe in separate videos, or we may kind of put it into, like I said, into the end of the month wrap up or something along those lines. So it should be fun to do that and give you guys a little more insight into how we're doing it here on this series. So thanks as always. And yeah, again, be sure to like and share all that. And on the next episode, we'll be back with another one here of WWE Raw.